So good evening. My name is Byron Dittberner. I'm a CRM consultant. I've worked on a number of CRM projects from small to medium businesses as well as large businesses as well. I specialize mainly in Dynamics 365 online and associated Microsoft products as well. And over the past couple of days, I've been running a bunch of different lectures, which is the basis of it, which is the 8 BCs for Dynamics. So it's a basic program for an entry-level person that wants to get to understand or build a foundation that they can actually start to learn from. So starting from the day one lecture on actually how to set up an environment and up till today where we are going to be talking about solutions. Today's lecture, we're going to be focusing on the configuration and customization components. And this is going to be actually over a number of lectures. So today we're going to work on solutions, how to actually create a solution, how to create a publish, and actually understanding the concept of how solutions actually work and their behavior and so forth, and why we actually use solutions. Bear in mind that this lecture is designed specifically for entry-level users, so we're not going to get too much into too much technical detail. We are going to create a solution. I'm going to show you where to create solutions and so forth, and then I'm going to show you how to export and then import solutions and so forth. Okay, right. So let's start off by first understanding the logic behind solutions. All right. So what is a solution and why do we use them? Every CRM environment has two or more environments. So in this case on the screen, that I'm showing you now, we have a sandbox environment and a production environment. Okay, so what does it actually mean? They are actually all working CRM environments or CRM systems, but the one is a sandbox, and a sandbox, just as it says, is a sandbox, you know, where kids play in the sand, where that's for testing. That's basically how we define it. A sandbox is where we go and build and develop our solutions, and then when we're ready, we move those solutions into a production environment. And the production environment is normally where your users are actually using the system. So if you have a customer that you deploy a CRM solution for, the customers and their users, and they will basically be working in the production instance, and then where your team that is doing development and testing and so forth is working in the sandbox. Let me give you some different context, right? Imagine if your customer only has one environment, a production instance, and you wanted to make changes or do some customization or do some configuration, and you did it in production. That means as you are making changes to the system, suddenly the users are going to start to experience changes that are popping up and so forth, which is not ideal. So generally speaking, whenever you build building in CRM, you build in your sandbox, and then when you finish building, you've done your testing and so forth, you'll move into a production environment, then the users will start using it. There is obviously a lot more detailed process, but one thing I do want to explain to you is there always a sandbox and a production? Okay, so very, very important for you to understand this is when you take a trial environment, you have only one instance, which is a production instance. When you pay for that environment, you by default get a sandbox environment with it. If you need more than one environment, so many businesses, especially big businesses, they'll have something called a dev environment. They'll have a QA environment. They'll have a UAT environment. And then they'll have a production environment. So what actually have they got? They've got one Office 365 subscription. And inside that Office 365 subscription, they have 4 Dynamics 365 instances, and each instance is a full Dynamics 365 system. And what they do is they actually have 3 sandboxes and 1 production instance. Each sandbox is used. The first one is used for dev. The next one is used for UAT, which is user acceptance testing. And then the third one is used for QA, which is quality assurance or making sure that everything is working 100%. And once it's gone through that process, then eventually the solution is then moved into production. So let me define for you what actually is a solution. So what a solution is, imagine a folder on your PC. So let's say for argument's sake, I'm going to make changes to a Dynamics 365. So what I do is I create a folder and I make all the changes inside that folder. And then I can take that folder and export it out of CRM, and I can go and copy it into and import it into another CRM environment, and then all the changes that I've made are now will take effect in the new CRM environment. I hope that makes sense. Right. So it's a method to contain all the changes you've made. Because just imagine for one moment, if you had a CRM instance, and the CRM instance you have You go and you make a whole bunch of changes. Now, how do you know what pieces or what components to take across? So how you do that in Dynamics is by creating the changes inside a solution, and then you just simply move the solution across to the production instance, which will take all your changes. So you create all your changes within a folder. All right. If you have any questions, please do me a favor and just pop your questions inside the chat box, and I'll answer your questions later on during the session. Okay. All right. So here's an example. So you'll see you've got the big circle, which is your Dynamics environment, and then the small little piece of the pie here, which is your solution. So these are the changes that you've made. Okay. And then as soon as you've made these changes, you've done the tests, you're happy that they're working, you will simply go and move that changes into production. But if you notice, what happens is your original solution is still there, so your changes are still in effect in your sandbox environment, and then in your production, you now have a copy. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So now we now have two environments that match each other 100%. All right, let's move on. You get two types of solutions. You get unmanaged and managed solutions. All right, so there's quite a big difference between the two. But I'm going to let's explain the difference, right? So an unmanaged solution is used in a sandbox. It can be edited. So when I say can be edited, what it means is if a solution is in an unmanaged state, it means I can go and add more components to it. I can modify the existing components in that solution. I can add new fields. I can rename fields. I can do a whole bunch of different stuff to that solution. So it's 100% editable. I can add components. I can remove components. So when they say add components, what they're referring to is I can add things like additional entities. I can add views. I can add charts. I can add all the components that come part of an entity. All right. Then, as an unmanaged solution also has the ability to be able to be exported as a managed or an unmanaged solution. So what's the difference? The difference between the two really is an unmanaged solution is where you are actually doing your building and you're constructing your CRM solution. Once you're happy and it's working, you will export that solution in a managed state. So once you export it in a managed state, what actually happens now is it locks up that solution. Why do people do it? They do it to prevent users from changing their configuration, to protect intellectual property, and so forth. So if I export a solution in a managed state, that's when I will be moving it into production. So once I move it into production and it's in a managed state, it cannot be edited. All right. Very, very important to remember is once I export a solution that's in an unmanaged state and I export it as managed, I then cannot import it back into the source solution. So let me take one step back to the previous slide. So let's say, for example, in my sandbox, if I have a solution here and this solution is an unmanaged state, and then I export it as managed. Once I export it as managed and I move it into production, I cannot take that managed solution and move it back into the sandbox. So it can only go out to a new instance. Can you import solutions across other tenants? So when I say other tenants, what I mean is, let's say, for example, I have my own CRM subscription. You have yours. You develop some really amazing tool that helps to calculate the projected income on an opportunity, for example. You can actually export that solution in a managed state. You can email it to me. I can import it into my solution, into my environment, and those changes will then take effect inside my environment. Obviously, there's a little bit of complexity involved in it, but that's the basic principle of it. All right. In a managed solution is used in, this is actually, a managed solution is used in UAT, dev, QA, and production environments. All right. So let me explain what that means. What that means is only in your dev environment. Sorry, there's actually a small mistake here. This dev is not actually supposed to be here. It's UAT, QA, and production. So important to note that, right? So when I'm building a solution, I will build the solution in an unmanaged state in my sandbox environment or my dev environment, whichever you prefer to call it. Once I package that solution and move it out into a UAT or QA environment, I will move it as a managed state. So your UAT, QA, and production environments, all the solutions in those environments are in a managed state. Okay. What is the properties of a managed solution? A managed solution cannot be edited, but it can be deleted. So what's the importance of that? Is if I import a solution and that solution is in a managed state, as soon as I import it in, the new fields, forms, and configuration that is done within a managed solution will take effect. I cannot edit that solution, but if I don't want those changes anymore, I can simply delete the solution and it will undo all of those changes that have been applied. All right. Why do we use managed solutions? One, to protect intellectual property, prevent users from changing configuration, and also, this is the last one, is the one I explained to you earlier, where you cannot import managed solutions back into the source solution. So let's go take one step back to the previous slide. If I created this solution and it's in an unmanaged state and I exported it out as managed and imported it into the production environment, if I wanted to take it out of production, one, you can't export it out of production. That's the first thing. I can only delete it. But if I take it out and, for example, and try to put it back into my source, which is the sandbox, you won't be able to import it back into the source. Okay. All right. So let's do a bit of a demo. I'm going to just drag my CRM environment over here. I've got a trial environment that we've opened, the one that we've been using since day one on this program. And let's go and actually have a look at how this actually looks and where we actually create solutions. So many of you that are working or that are on watching this video right now, you probably have worked on CRMs that look slightly different to this. And the reason why it looks different, this is the latest version of CRM that is currently out. So the nav is on the side now, opposed to on the top. But it's pretty much the same thing. Your module applications are on the side over here. So here's the sales mod application, services over here, marketing is over here, and then your entities are on the side here. So that's quite a nice change. I quite like it. All right. So if I want to get to my settings area, my settings area is no longer on your app settings. You'll see over here, you don't have a settings tab here anymore. So on the top right, there's a gear. If you click on this gear and you click on advanced settings, it will actually open a new tab in your browser, which will allow you to get to the settings section. So the settings section has the older UI, which you guys will be quite used to. Those of you that have already started doing customization and configuration. All right. So let's just wait for that to load. And once it loads, then we're good to go. All right. First thing you want to do is click on the drop down over here, the caret. It'll open your settings, and we're going to navigate to solutions. Now you can of course go, if you want to make changes to your system, you can definitely go to customizations, and then you can click on customize the system. But I want to show you this, and there's a reason why I want to show you this, because there's a very important step to actually remember here. All right. So if I go to an entity, for example, and let's go to a very common entity, the one that I use most, the contact entity. Okay. Just wait for that to open. And if I go to fields, for example, you'll notice that the name of this field has no prefix. So these here are what they refer to as out-of-the-box fields. And you'll also see the state on the side here. They're all in a managed state. So these fields cannot be edited. All right. However, there is certain circumstances where if I go to customizable and I change the view, it actually shows me a list of system views that you are actually able to customize. All right. So in other words, I'm able to change the label. In terms of the actual display name, I'm able to change a couple of things. However, when we create a new field, let me show you what happens. And this is very, very important to remember this, because no matter how experienced you are, this thing will catch you every now and then. And you'll notice that if you create a solution and that solution has a prefix on the name of the field that says new underscore, it means you are possibly creating a field outside of your custom solution that you are busy building. So if I go create a field now, let's just call this, I'm just going to call this a test field. And the field will have a name. I'll give it a description. This is a test field, for example. And let's leave it as a single line of text for now and save and close. You'll actually notice something that's very different in your list of fields, right? So if we scroll down over here and we go and look for that field, you will see shortly the field actually has a prefix on it, right? So let's just click on this display name to sort this data. And There we go. Let's go find our field. Test field somewhere here. There it is there. Okay. Now let's look carefully at this field. Can you see the prefix is new underscore? So when you create a new field in your default solution, so that's where I'm working now in my default solution, it will always have a prefix of new underscore. So if you need to be very careful, because it very often happens that you can by mistake create a new field, a new form, or normally a new field, or anything that you create that has a new underscore that actually sits outside of your solution. So when you try to import your solution into your target environment, it actually won't include that. You have to manually go and include it. You also see the states. There's an unmanaged state. This is because I have created this field. All right. So it's not the ideal way to work. So let's actually close that down, and let's actually navigate to solutions. So whenever I want to make changes to my current CRM, I go and create a solution. I give that solution a name, and I build all my changes inside that solution. Okay. So on the top right, you'll see this little colorful blocks over here. You click on new. And the first thing we're going to do, we're going to give our solution a name. And let's say, for example, our solution, we're going to be working with the contact entity. We're going to be making changes to the contact entity, right? So I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say contact entity update. And what I also like to do in my solution names is I like to give it a date so that I can quite easily refer back to when I actually made these changes. All right. Then the publisher. The publisher determines what that prefix can be. I'm going to click on look up more records, and I'm going to create a brand new publisher. So let's click on new. Okay. So my display name for my publisher, I'm going to call this, let's call it ABC for Dynamics. ABC for Dynamics. And then it'll give me a logical name, which will be that with no spaces. All right. And then you see the prefix. You see here where it says new. That's why in the default solution it says new underscore, is because the prefix for new fields in the default solution is always new. All right. So I'm going to give this one a new prefix, and I'm going to give it ABC. Now you watch when I tab out, it'll give me a sample. There it says ABC entity. All right. And over here, I can put in the contact details and marketplace details and so forth. So this basically determines the ownership of this actual this solution. So this is the contact details with regards to who is the publisher, who owns the solution that we're going to be creating. Okay. Right. Let's go save and close. Right. Now, once we got save and close, we now check that there's our solution. We click on add. So we've got our solution. We've got our publisher. And let's give it a version. So I'm going to go 1.0.0.0. Okay, so our very first one. I can give it a description. So changes to the contact form. Okay, fantastic. And then click on save. So what I've essentially done now is I've created the actual folder. So I've got the folder ready. I don't have any components in this folder yet in terms of which entities I want to work with, but the folder is there and the publisher is created. All right. So the next thing to do is to actually add the components that you want to make changes to. All right. So I'm going to go and I want to work on the contact entity. So I'm going to select entity. Right. Once I've selected entity, the next thing to do is to go and find my contact entity. So we're going to scroll down over here and we go look for contact. I'm going to click on OK. And what this is going to do is going to bring the contact entity into our actual solution. Right. Then these two check boxes on top are quite important, right? So if I check this, add all assets, all right, what this is going to do is going to add all the forms, all the views, all the charts, all the fields, everything. Right? And it's actually totally unnecessary to do that. And I'll explain to you why. Remember, all of these fields are the default fields for CRM. So in essence, what I only want to do is I want to include in my solution only those components that are going to be affected by the changes I'm going to make. Because the target solution is an exact replica of this current solution. So my sandbox and my production instance are exactly the same as each other. So what I prefer to do is to uncheck add all assets, and I keep entity metadata, which is the header information of my entity, intact. All right. Now, what do I want to make changes to? I want to make changes to the form. So let's go take, for example, the main contact form, which is this one over here. And the views, charts, fields, everything. I'm not going to take any of this stuff because currently my system is out of the box. It's a brand new system. The target system in terms of the production is exactly the same. Okay. So I'm going to click on finish. Okay. Let's wait till that loads. Right. Now, what it's giving you over here is it's giving you a list of it's basically saying the system has detected that there are components that require other components currently not included in the solution. Do you want to add these subcomponents? All right. So you can actually make a choice. So it's giving me a recommendation of custom fields at the bottom here that it's asking me, do I want to add these fields? And you can select yes or no. In this case, I'm going to select no. And the reason being is because if you look at the prefix over here, this one says log and log and log and log and log. So this is actually from a different solution. So I don't need these components for the changes I'm going to be making. All right. So when your solution has dependencies on other fields, then yes, you would add them. In this case, I don't want them. I only want to add the components that I want to change, which is only the form. So if I expand the entities over here and I expand contact, if we click on contact itself and wait for it to load, this is what they refer to as the entity metadata. All right. Now, what I wanted to do is make changes to the form. So if I click on forms, and if I click on contact itself, it's going to open the main contact form. And now I can go and make changes to this main contact form. All right. So let's say, for example, on the right-hand side, the icebreaker section, I don't want that. So I'm going to select it and remove it. Click on OK. I don't want the schedule assistant, remove that. Okay, no problem. I've got the company information, opportunities, cases. Let's say, for example, we're not going to be using the maps. We can remove that. Okay, we scroll down. And then now another change I want to make is the details section. What I want is when the user opens the form, I actually want this details section to be collapsed. So let me explain. Because it's open over here, by default, when the user opens the form, this form will be, these fields will be closed. If that, it's collapsed. So what that means is when the user opens the field, by default, that tab will be collapsed. All right. Now, let's say, for example, I want to add one more field. I want to add a field called account number. So what I can do is, let me go save and close. So I've made the changes to my form now. Now you can, of course, create new fields directly on the contact form, but I prefer to follow good habits when you're building, and those habits are don't go and do shortcuts. Rather go the long way around, get it done right the first time. All right. We're going to go click on fields. I'm going to create a new field. And the field that I want now is an account number field. All right. So I'm going to go give it a name, say account number. All right. And you notice that my prefix is ABC now. So this tells me that's the correct publisher. So all my changes within my solution are associated with the same publisher, which gives me the ownership. Then also with regards to the field name, I personally don't like field names that have capital letters in them. So I'm just going to change this to account number, just like that. Fantastic. Next thing is the field requirement. I'm going to make this a business required field, which means in other languages, we could say it's a mandatory field. Okay, we want to have it searchable, yes or no. So I'm going to leave that as yes. Do I want to enable field security? I don't want to. Auditing, I don't want to enable auditing on the field. And the description, I'm going to say the customer's account number, for example. All right, and then I need to select the data type. So is this a single line of text, an option set, multi-option set? What is it? Now, because it's an account number, I actually prefer to use a single line of text. So you can do that. You can do that. Or alternatively, you can use a whole number. But when you use a whole number, you tend to get, when it's a very long number, it has decimal places in it. Not decimals, it has commas for thousands and so forth. So I prefer to use single line of text. It just looks a bit neater, especially for this purpose of an account number. Then the field type, is it simple or calculated? So I'm going to say simple. Text format, is it a text? Yes. All right. The maximum length, so this is the number of characters. So this one is set to 100. Let's actually reduce that to 20 characters. You know what? Let's reduce it to 10 for demonstration purposes. All right. So we're good to go. We can click on Save and Close. And now I'm ready to actually add my new field onto my form. So let's go to Forms. I'm just going to add that new field. I'm not going to add a whole ton more field. I'm going to cover this later on in customization and configuration when we do fields and field types tomorrow. But I just want to demonstrate how we actually affect these changes and what changes we can actually make inside an unmanaged solution. Okay. There we go. So now our fields here, we're simply going to change this drop down to custom fields. And then we can see there's our new account number field. I can just take it, drag it, and drop it. And now I've got my account number field, and it's mandatory. All right. And then click on Save and Close. And there we go. We finished. Next, we're done. We can click on Publish Customizations. Now, even though we've created a field and added the form and we're making changes and so forth, those changes actually hadn't taken effect yet. So only once we actually publish the customizations, when a user goes to a form, will they actually be able to see the changes that we've made. And then as soon as this finishes publishing, we'll go and confirm if our changes have taken effect. And if we're happy, then we will go ahead and export the solution out. Okay, so let's just give that a second. You do sometimes get situations where when you're publishing a solution where it does exactly that, where it gives you page unresponsive. Just click on wait and be patient. It will eventually publish the solution. Okay, so let's give that a couple of seconds. Okay, so any questions, please type your questions in the chat box and then we will continue. We'll just wait for this to publish quickly. You'll also notice that while this is publishing, we actually can't use CRM itself. You'll notice everything is frozen. That's because it's currently busy publishing. It doesn't take too long. We'll just give it a bit of time to. There we go. Now we know it's published, so we can go ahead and close it. And then in order for our changes to take effect, we do need to refresh the screen because the page we're looking at is currently cached. So we can just click on refresh and go back over here and let's refresh our CRM over here. There we go. Let's refresh CRM. Okay, fantastic. Let's go to contacts. Right. Let's go and open a new contact record. Okay. Let's change to the form. So remember this form over here. So the first label, this is actually your entity, the contact entity, and this is the actual form name. The form name we changed was contact form, not portal contact. So if we click on the drop down and we go to contact, there we go. Okay, so this script error that we're getting over here is because I've went and messed with the form in this script that's trying to run, but we're not going to worry about that for now. I'm just going to click on OK. Now, if you take a look, contact information, there is our custom field that we added, and you can see that custom field is in a managed state. And then the other tabs, here's our tabs that we've added onto the form. They're all here, and everything is working perfectly. Okay, and you'll notice all the other components that are removed, they've all been removed out. The map is gone. And we've got a nice, slim, sleek form that we can actually go and deploy. All right. So let's say we're happy. Here's our solution over here. And we're ready to package the solution and export it out. And we want to move it into production or we want to email it to somebody, whichever. All right. So I go to this little icon over here and I click on export. You can, of course, go and click on publish or customizations. Just call it a double check. But I know that I've done the publishing and we've done the testing. We know that it's published and it's working. So in this case, I'm going to click on next. All right. Now, there's a warning message that comes up here. So what this is saying that the following components are missing from your solution. Your import will fail if these components don't already exist in the target Microsoft Dynamics 365 organization. All right. So what it's saying is if these two fields, and it's basically saying they are type web resource, they say if they do not exist in my target solution, then me importing the solution I'm just about to create is going to fail. All right. Because these two web resources are missing. Okay. In this case, I'm not using a target instance. So I'm at this stage just exporting it. But generally speaking, you would stop at this point and go and add these two into your solution to make sure that your solution actually successfully imports into the target. However, You do get certain situations where it'll say there's certain missing components, but you know for certain that those components exist in the target solution. In that case, you don't need to worry. You can proceed to the next step. So let's click on next. All right, and we click on next. Now here it's going to ask me for the state. Do I want it in an unmanaged or managed state? Now remember, the golden rule is in a development environment, we develop in an unmanaged state, and when we're ready to move it into UAT, QA, or production, then we will do it in a managed state. So that why? So people can't make changes to our upgrades. All right, so I'm going to change that to managed, and I'm going to click on export. Okay, now we wait. So what are we waiting for is it's busy compiling the solution, and you'll see on the bottom right of my browser shortly the solution will download. Okay, there we go. There's the solution. It's been downloaded. Now I simply go into my new environment. So let's assume I have a different environment. I will go click on import. Okay. And you go and choose the file. So I think that will be in my downloads. And there's my contact entity. Now, if you remember earlier on, I said to you that you cannot import a solution back into its source environment. So in this case, we know that it's going to fail. But if this was a target environment, then obviously it would be successful. And you'll get the error message here saying the solution is already installed on the system as an unmanaged solution, and the package supplied is attempting to install it in a managed mode. Import can only be updated solutions when the modes match. Uninstall the current solution and try again. Okay, so I hope you get the context here. The context is I've gone and created a folder. We call it a solution. We've made the changes we want. We export it out. We go log into the new environment, and then we export that solution in. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Is there any questions at this point? And I would love to answer. Those of you who want to jump off the call now, I'm basically done with the lecture on managed and unmanaged solutions. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me tonight. If you have any questions, please feel free to shout. You can get me on LinkedIn, as well as some of you have my number. You can WhatsApp me as well.